right. Well, I think we're going to then get ourselves started. And we're grateful for the new year to be able to gather in this way in our hybrid fashion with some in person and some online. And we're grateful to James, our technology specialist, who's willing to start us off this year, teaching us about social ministry. And we're thankful that James's sister and brother-in-law, Benita and Johnny, are with us this morning. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you.
So why don't we begin our class with a word of prayer. Let's pray. Faithful God, we praise you this new day, this Lord's Day, and we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for your presence with us here. We pray, Lord, that your spirit will animate our discussion, will animate James's presentation, will empower us and embolden us and strengthen us to engage online with those who you put in our paths, with those who you know are ripe for ministry and for hearing about your love for them. Stir among us this morning, pierce our hearts with your love and grace. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we got Marcia as well.
Yeah.
Do you need to do sound? Yeah.
Right.
Click on the sound if you've got a video. Yeah. And then,
Good.
and then
Exactly
share.
this.
You can just share, and then whatever you see is what they'll see.
Got it.
You can make it even smaller. Yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'll start off today with a small video excerpt about what is social ministry, and then we'll dive into what I'm going to be talking about.
So social ministry has a lot of programs. We have obviously the food pantry, but we also provide direct services for any financial needs. But we also offer a lot of support. We have bereavement support. We have a support program for children who have had any type of a loss, whether it's divorce or death of a parent. It's called Rainbows for All God's Children. And we proudly continue this program. We're the only parish left actually through the diocese in Nassau County that still has rainbows. We also have outreach programs for people who are very interested in volunteering. We started a program called Families Giving Back, a ministry. Parents volunteer right along with their children. We do a lot of services for seniors. We have a transportation ministry for people who are in need of medical rides. And we also have divorce and beyond programs. So we do a lot here that we're happy about. What I find a big blessing for working here and for anybody that's volunteering or participating in any of our social ministry programs is that they're part of the big ministry of Christ. There's just so many ways to serve Jesus and to even just lend a hand. It's really wonderful to be part of the social ministry office as a director, and also to have so many volunteers where together we can serve the mission of Christ and bring so much peace, love, and joy to people directly through our volunteer opportunities, our services, our call to give, and it just brings us connected to the full ministry of Christ.
Church in New York. A little bit about what they do as far as social ministry. So let's go here. So we'll start with the definition I got online about what social ministry is. The mission to which Christ calls the church clearly includes work of charity and justice. Throughout his public ministry, Jesus demonstrated the degree to which we are to provide services to others in need while working to change social conditions that create such needs. The church is called both to direct service works of charity, like providing food, clothing, and shelter, and to address the root cause of social problems, works of justice, like changing an unjust law or social structure that comes from a Catholic church in Hawaii, Catholic Hawaii. So today what I'll be talking about, I kind of wanted to be open format a little bit. Feel free to ask questions or chime in. Today, I'll talk a little bit about the history of social ministry in general with churches. Then I'll talk about the Presbyterian history. Then we'll specifically talk about PPC's social ministry history. Then we'll talk about what modern social ministry looks like, and then how that all ties into social media and relates. So this is an excerpt I got from Mark 16:15. And he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation as it relates to social ministry. So here's a little bit about the history. Social ministry, the practice of using the resources of a church to serve the needs of the community, has a long and rich history within Christianity. It's certainly, aspect of Christianity that a lot of us are involved in or seek to be involved in. From the earliest days of the church, Christians have been called to follow examples of Jesus by loving their neighbors and serving the poor and disadvantaged. In the earlier centuries, the church was a major provider of social services, as it still is today, such as hospitals, orphanages, and schools. The Catholic Church in particular played a significant role in the development of these institutions in Europe, and many monasteries and covenants provided charitable services to the poor and the sick. Continuing on, during the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, the emphasis on social ministry in the church shifted. The reformers, such as Martin Luther and John Calvin, emphasized the importance of living faith through good works and service to others. However, they also believed that the primary purpose of the church was to proclaim the gospel and teach the word of God rather than engage in social activism. In the 19th and early 20th century, many Protestant churches, including the Presbyterian Church, established various kinds of social programs, such as soup kitchens, hospitals, and schools. These programs were often targeted at helping the poor and disadvantaged. Latter half of the 20th century, the focus of the social ministry within churches shifted once again, with an emphasis on social justice issues such as civil rights, fair housing, and peace and disarmament. Many churches became involved in advocacy and lobbying efforts on such issues, and some even engaged in direct action, such as participating in protests and boycotts. Today, social ministry remains an important part of mission of many churches. Many churches continue to engage in a variety of social ministry activities, including local and global outreach, service projects, and advocacy on social justice issues. So all in all, with the history, you could see from the very beginning, as Jesus was preaching and going out into the world, we follow by example, and throughout history, that's definitely been a part of the mission of many churches. I believe, many churches definitely use their own interpretation and in their own communities go out and, do good work and see what needs to get done. So church by church, it definitely varies. And throughout history, like it was mentioning social justice issues, over time, it can evolve into many different meanings and many different interpretations, but all in all, it's community-based and it's for the good of the majority of people. Here's another excerpt. Do not forget to do good and to share with others, for such sacrifices God is pleased. Hebrews 13:16. Now we'll talk a little bit about the history of social ministry within the Presbyterian Church. Presbyterian Church has a long history of social ministry, dating back to the early days of the Protestant Reformation, as I mentioned. John Calvin, who's a key figure in the Reformation, believed in the importance of Christians living out their faith through practical acts of compassion and service. In the 19th and 20th centuries, many Presbyterian churches established various kinds of social ministry programs, such as soup kitchens, hospitals, schools. These programs were often targeted as helping the poor and disadvantaged, as I mentioned. The establishment of these kinds of institutions was a way for Presbyterian churches to live out their faith in a practical way and make a tangible difference in the lives of those who were in need. In the latter half of the 20th century, the focus of social ministry within the church shifted again with an emphasis on social justice issues such as civil rights, fair housing, and peace and disarmament. So as you can see, this is very much, some of these issues are very much dependent on the time period of which, these issues are going on. Many churches became involved in advocacy and lobbying efforts on behalf of these issues. Some even engaged in direct action, such as protests and boycotts. Today, social ministry remains an important part of the mission of many churches. Many churches continue to engage in a variety of social ministry activities, including local, global outreach, service projects, and advocacy on social justice issues. This is a cool book I found on Amazon. It's a history of the Presbyterian missions throughout America, I believe, from 1944 to 2007. So if anyone's interested, pretty expensive, but there's some used ones for $4. So this volume includes a collection of interpretive essays on the work of missions in the Presbyterian Church for over 60 years, discusses challenges to which the church's mission activities and to its missionaries examine the ways which changes denominational structures impacted mission work. Maybe this could be good for the Bible group, men's Bible group. Reflections from the Presbyterian mission leaders, firsthand accounts from missionaries, overview of the work in specific areas. So I think this is a cool resource. Maybe some of us will read. Now, I believe we'll get into the history of social work in PPC. I got this from Tom, who, while I was working on this PowerPoint, handed it to me. I thought it was cool because this is the old logo, I believe. And the Bible verse again, and do not forget to do others and share with others for such sacrifices God has pleased. 13:16. So you might ask, how did I get the history of the church? I had to scour the library and a bunch of different places. Ultimately, I ended up in Jean's office, and she gave me a list of all the steeple to peoples from 1967 onward. So I went through most of them, and it was very, very interesting to see the history of the church from where it is to now. And I thought it'd be appropriate considering this is the 60th year of the church and when it was founded. So I went through each of the steeple to peoples, looking for examples of social ministry, social outreach, various local programs we were involved in, even programs that were stemmed internationally, as I'll talk about now. So throughout PPC's history, we've been very much involved in social ministry. I'll talk about it a little later on, but there are many connections between when PPC was started, the earlier years of development, and how we're involved now in the community. There are very cool parallels that I found. But anyway, this is a direct excerpt from the 1970 Freedom Fund. It's from the Steeple to People. So it says, a special offering will be received at worship service on Sunday, May 17th, known as the Fund for Freedom. This money is used by the Council on Church and Race of the United Presbyterian Church to meet emergencies and crises, as well as special needs of persons and groups. The Council on Church and Race is the national agency of the United Presbyterian Church, set up to deal with many forms of racism that infect our society, working with many other agencies of our church to combat injustice and discrimination, poverty affecting Black Americans, Spanish Americans, Indian Americans, and Oriental Americans. So I summarize this saying funds were used to assist a Presbyterian church, I believe in DC, with a summer program of 60 children for 2 months. So this again is contextual, depend on the time period and all the issues that were happening and going on. And for this particular church service, they wanted offerings that were, pertinent to that. Still in the 1970s, we have I'll read this excerpt. The United Church of Zambia, Africa, has invited the Washington City Presbytery to send a group of young people to Zambia this summer in a project called Mission Zambia. These youth are to be carefully selected for their ability to communicate their own concerns and insights into the issues of life as seen by a Christian, and to share those concerns with people in Zambia. So how does this relate to PPC? Church members were encouraged to donate to the project in the form of scholarships for the young missionaries. And I believe members were definitely able to donate, and scholarships were given out. So these are for youth in the presbytery that were sent out to Zambia in order to preach the gospel. And I read a little bit more, and it was basically they just wanted to share their involvement. They wanted to share their faith. They wanted to see how they could help out. So it was an outwards mission project. So moving on to the 80s, we have 1987, a special thank you to the ladies who provided casseroles for the evening shelter Rainbow Place at Rockville Presbyterian Church this past cold season. Your cooking is always greatly appreciated. It was a very common theme throughout all the steeple peoples I was reading, that a lot of women in the church were hugely involved with many programs. A lot of them were also women-led programs, and there was quite a bit of thank yous, I guess, to all the women that were involved in things like cooking food and providing clothing and being a part of like food drives and just overall a lot of great work done by the women of this church. Fast forward to 1991, a bunch of various local mission work. Let's see. So 1991, PPC will carry on a wide range of local and worldwide mission activities during February, in which we urge as many as possible of our congregation to participate. Soup kitchens. Members of our church will be working at Miriam's Kitchen in DC and the Lord's Table in Gaithersburg. The need is particularly great during winter months. Blanket Sunday, a special offering to buy blankets distributed by Church World Service whenever disasters or emergencies strike. Medical support, a delegation from PCP led by Melanie Mason will participate. I think I meant PPC, sorry. Will participate in a conference on medical benevolence at Gaithersburg Potomac Church. So similar themes that you'll see as it relates to the previous slides are social ministry is definitely going out there, seeing what are the needs of the community, what are the needs of people who are in need, how can we best help, how can we utilize, our talents such as cooking or even, medical support, things of that nature. How can we utilize what we have in order to help the community and figure out ways, not only locally, but internationally, how we can spread the arms of PPC into many different areas. Let's go to 1999. We have our youth mission trip. These are all excerpts, by the way. The time is rapidly approaching when 10 youth and 2 adults from our church will venture forth to Greenville, Michigan. Activity. I went to the most recent mission trip, summer mission trip. I would definitely say that this stands still, or stands true. Definitely hard work, incredible fun, and life-changing still. Our work campers will be spending the first week of their summer vacation repairing and building homes for needy families. This is over 23 years ago, still true today. Our youth have been working hard to raise funds for their mission. Remember the hoagie sandwiches on Super Bowl Sunday and the car wash a couple weeks ago. So we did have
Our daughter was on that trip.
Oh,
and
wow.
They got home at like 6 o'clock at night. And Emily came in and sat at the kitchen table and talked to us until 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
She had seen that week.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, the youth, what do we do? Chili Bowl. I'm sure there's more coming up as a
Pancake fundraiser end of
pancake.
this month.
Yeah, pancake fundraisers coming up. So there are a lot of parallels within past PBC now, which is very cool. So Mission Trip Ohio, 2004, fast forwarding a little bit, our work camp group of 30 youth and 6 adult advisors are ready to head to Canton, Ohio for a week of service to God and God's people. We will repair homes, replace roofs, build wheelchair ramps, more painting, and hanging drywall. I don't know why. Again, these are excerpts. The Steve of the People was quite direct and kind of funny. And these are some of the families. There was thank yous to all the mission trips. So there was thank yous to the Souls, the Dunlops, Johnsons, McMahons, who are still active members today, which I thought was very, very cool, considering this is over 20 years ago, and still the core and essence of the social ministry is the people that are involved, the church that's involved, the mission that's important, and these families are still very much involved today. So I thought that was very cool. Oh, this is same thing. So 2008, Rebuild Together, a work crew from Potomac Presbyterian will perform repairs for a needy homeowner in Montgomery County as participants in the National Rebuilding Together program. So this is along the lines of working within our own community, trying to help people that are in need. 2009, join us for a week of service and fellowship. If you're entering middle school throughout finishing high school, you're eligible to participate. We'll be working at a variety of sites in both the local and metropolitan DC area, helping with the homeless, the hungry, the elderly, and the sick. This is more youth oriented, but still relevant to social work. So now I talked a little bit about the social work. I'll talk a little bit more about the outreach, and in terms of how, still relates to social ministry, still it's outreach and reaching out to people. So 1970s, going back in time again, PPP's Steeple to People included excerpts such as Service to the Handicapped, which was an article detailing how disabled people, not just blind, may be able to take advantage of audiobooks as Montgomery County Public Libraries. So in the earlier Steeple to Peoples, and still true to this day, there was a lot of collaborative efforts in how members may be able to volunteer and help. It may not be PPC direct projects, but it was things that involved information like, hey, this is going on. If any member is able to help out, or hey, this organization or these people are in need. If anyone is able to help, things of that nature. Another example, foster home. There was an excerpt in one of the Steeple to Peoples that said foster parents needed. Another article that detailed the need of local foster homes for parents to foster children in need for a temporary amount of time. So that excerpt was saying, hey, there's a bunch of kids who need help for a small period of time, and there were I guess they reached out to PPC and were trying to see if any of the members were able to foster some of these kids. 1987 nursing home, the Friendly Visitor Program in area nursing homes is one of the volunteer projects of the women of the church. At present, more women are needed to assist Dr. Uhl in visiting local nursing home residents who are relatives of our church members. We still do this to this day. An occasional 1 hour visit by one person or a team or two would be much appreciated. What's the program called?
The visitation.
Visitation, yep. So 1987 food pantry donations. Gaithersburg Help needs food to stock their food pantry. Suggestions, cereals, peas, spam, stew, soups, corned beef, etc. All donations should be left in the basket in the narthex, and thank you. Again, another parallel to what we're doing this year and years prior. Soup Kitchen Help. PPC Mission Committee is honored to assist the CBS community-based shelter, a part of MOCA's community ministry, Montgomery County. The shelter serves up to 36 adults. These individuals attend professional and treatment programs during the daytime hours, working diligently on the issues related to the homelessness. We will need your help to provide and serve dinner for the weeks of February 1st to the 7th. So that's 2009. Today we have various organizations we're partnered with or associated with or help out with. Interfaith Works, Leveling Playing Field for Cristo, Presbyterian Disaster Service, Man Food Center, and still Rainbow Place. So this is, again, just a brief overview. I definitely think it's very, very interesting to read through the Steeple to Peoples and, just seeing how, I think maybe in the 60s or 70s, I was reading there was a hunt club. So there's a PPC hunt club. I think they went hunting. It's very cool. Another thing that was cool is this past summer was Summer of Connections. But since the 60s, there have been many various clubs and ways of connecting. There was, I think there was something that was like the men of PPC will gather at this golf thing or this hunt. I think it was the hunt thing. It was very pertinent even from the very start that connections and community based and doing things outside the church and being involved in the community together and family stuff that was all sort of connected from the 60s up until now. We have another quote. So then, as we have opportunity, let us do good to everyone and especially to those who are of the household of faith. Galatians 6:10. So now I'll be talking a little bit about what modern social ministry looks like, which is not that different at all from, from the history of social ministry to the Presbyterian history to our history. These are just some examples, providing food and shelter to homeless or those in need of assistance, partnering with local organizations to provide resources and support for refugees or immigrants, organizing community cleanup events or beautification projects, offering financial counseling or assistance to those in need, providing support and resources for those dealing with addiction or mental health issues, running a food or clothing drive to benefit those in need, partnering with schools to provide mentorship, tutoring, and other support for students, providing transportation assistance for those who are elderly or who have disabilities, offering job training or job search support for those seeking employment, supporting disaster relief efforts either locally or globally. So these are just some examples of what modern social ministry may look like across all churches. Definitely very happy that, you know, as I'm reading through this, I know we're probably imagining what we do at PPC, and we're definitely involved in, you know, many of these things. We're associated with the Presbyterian Disaster Relief, I think, or Association. And there's many examples, Man of Food Drive, things of that nature. So with all this wealth of information, how do we extend ourselves, continue to extend ourselves outside our community as we're doing? And this leads us to why social media is important for churches. So I have another video. This one's about 3 or 4 minutes.
If you're still
A little bit of context, this guy's like kind of my go-to when it comes to social media and churches. And I believe he's a pastor. And he's making the argument just in general why social media is necessary for churches.
on the fence as to why social media is important for your church, or if you need help convincing someone else of its importance, in this video I'm going to lay out the definitive case for why social media is necessary for your church. Well, hey there, I'm Brady Shearer from ProChurchTools.com, helping you seize the 167 hours beyond your Sunday service. We publish new videos every single week, so make sure that you hit the subscribe button below, and if you like this video, make sure you hit the like button as well. Let's start by thinking about this. Not too long ago, on January 1st, 2005, platforms like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Snapchat didn't even exist in the public's eye. Fast forward to today, and social media is one of the most dominant forces in our culture. And this is the core reason why social is so important to the future of your church: attention. I like to say that attention is the most valuable commodity that your church can possess. In fact, let me say it again. Attention is the most valuable commodity that your church can possess. I mean, think about it. Your church could have the most dynamic speaker, the most engaging worship, the most vibrant kids and student ministries, but if no one ever showed up, it wouldn't matter. Before we can share the hope of Jesus with anyone, or before we can disciple an existing believer, we need their attention. And this is why social media is so important to your church, because that's where the attention already exists. According to Pew, 68% of all American adults are on Facebook. So think about that for a moment. If there was a public space in your community where 7 out of every 10 people in your city visited regularly, would you have a presence there as a church? Absolutely. It goes without saying. On the flip side, let's look at church attendance numbers. In the year 2000, Barna reported 58% of adults had attended church in the last month. In 2015, however, that number had decreased to just 46%, a drop of 12 full percentage points in just 15 years. And sure, social media is important today, but it's going to be even more important tomorrow. Millennials like myself, we're natives to social media. We grew up on it. And currently, 1 in 3 American workers is a millennial. That means we're not an up-and-coming generation. We're not on deck. As a matter of fact, we are currently the single largest age group in the American workforce already. And that piece of the pie that we currently own, 1 in 3, is only going to increase. It's only going to go up. Of course, beyond that, if you think social media is just for millennials, that's not true either. The most recent data from Nielsen revealed that the average adult ages 18 to 34 spends 6 hours and 19 minutes on social media every week. That's the millennial number, but even higher than that, higher than the millennials, are adults ages 35 to 49. They are spending 6 hours and 58 minutes on social media each week. And even those 50 plus are still spending more than 4 hours on social media every week. And the point I'm trying to drive home is this: for decades, our churches have poured the majority of our time, money, staff, and volunteers into creating a memorable weekend service, putting together the best 1-hour Sunday morning experience that we can. But we're currently living through the single biggest communication shift in the last 500 years, the biggest communication shift since the printing press. And so we need to begin to shift our focus. There are 168 hours in a week. And at Pro Church Tools, we're all about helping you seize the 167 hours beyond your Sunday service. Instead of pouring every last dime into improving your weekend experience, instead of demanding people pay attention to what you're doing, instead of looking at your community and saying, hey, come to us, it's time we begin to go to them and simply show up where their attention already is fixed. Social media has the infrastructure, they've got the audience, and most importantly, they have the attention. All we need to do is dive right in. If you liked this video, make sure you hit the like button below and definitely subscribe to.
So he's making the argument that social media is important. it's important for churches, et cetera, et cetera. So how, that's part of my job here is to kind of figure out, what are we putting on our social media? Second, how is important and relevant to the overall mission? And now, even in, creating this PowerPoint and such, I'm thinking, how can it really relate to our social ministry efforts? Anything we do community-based, there's flyers and things that we send out. So now it's just, doubling down and figuring out how, like he was saying, how can we outreach to the community? How can we get newer people on board? How can we figure out ways of involvement and things of that nature? So social media ministry, this is the last sort of topic I'll touch on. Social media can be a powerful tool for churches, as you mentioned, to use in their social ministry efforts. Here are a few ways social media can help raise awareness. Social media platforms can be used to share information about social ministry initiatives and events, which can help raise awareness and bring in potential volunteers and donors. Connecting with the community. Social media can be used to connect with community members and organizations that may be able to help with social ministry efforts. Mobilize volunteers. Social media can be used to recruit and mobilize volunteers for social ministry initiatives and events. Fundraise. Many social media platforms have built-in tools for fundraising. It's relatively new, which can be used to support social ministry efforts. Fifth, share success stories. Social media can be used to share success stories and testimonials from people who have been helped through social ministry efforts, which can inspire others to get involved. Sixth, create online support groups. Some churches have used social media to create online support groups for people dealing with specific issues such as addiction or grief. These groups can provide a sense of community and support for people who may not have access to in-person resources. Seventh, hosting virtual fundraisers, another relatively new feature. Many social media platforms have tools that allow users to create and host virtual fundraisers. This could be a great way for churches to raise money. In our case, maybe for mission trips or other initiatives without having to hold in-person events. Eighth, sharing educational content. Social media can be used to share educational content related to social ministry efforts. For example, a church could share articles about poverty, addiction, or other issues that they are working to address in their community. I believe I have one more video. So this video, context-wise, it's from a church.
Okay, Alex.
And this is, I believe this is the head pastor, and these are the part of their social media team. So they're specifically talking about how social media relates to social ministry, and it's a podcast they do, so they're just talking about it. So I'll play a little bit of it.
You lead this amazing team, right? So let's kind of get into the moment. Sunday just happened, and we're considering this week. So what are some of the takeaways that you have from this past weekend, and what are you hoping to communicate from this past weekend's message through social media?
So first of all, we've talked about, we had so many amazing missionaries travel super far to be here and to speak at all of our campuses. And so there's a post we have planned for this week that we're really going to take and highlight them and thank them for their time and, away from their homes, away from their family, whoever they've left out there. And then also ask the church to pray with us for them through all the challenges that they're facing. I know there's some people that are trying to move right now, or they're in the application process, or, there's all kinds of things with each person. So sharing, a little bit about our missionaries, because some of them are staying here for a little while. Keep that in mind this week. And then also from the message, encouraging our church to continue to be ambassadors in their faith throughout the week. So asking them what that looks like, and really seeing if they can. You don't have to be a missionary like overseas to share the gospel. You can share it to someone you work with, or someone at your gym, or the person that always checks you out at the grocery store. Really sharing that, keeping that in people's minds this week will be very big. So
yeah, Tony talked about.
So basically, in their past week, they had some missionaries come and talk in their church from the church, and before this talk, they were talking about kind of staying in the moment, things of that nature. So he was asking them, how, with this past week and staying in the moment, how do you use that in this up and coming week on social media? And she's just reiterating the point that, not everyone has to be a missionary, but they can be reminded throughout the week, and also the missionaries can be thanked for their effort. So, and in kind of a way, they're reinforcing the idea that mission work is important. They're encouraging participation, potentially donations. They're encouraging that people give thanks to the missionaries. And that's just another indirect way that social media can support social ministry. I think that is it. So all in all, we talked about the history of social ministry, the history of the Presbyterian social ministry, our personal history, how social ministry, modern social ministry, and how social media can help impact. And that's sort of, again, my role with the tech and all the stuff in the church. So in this upcoming year, personally, I'll start thinking about how all the projects and various programs that we're involved with in the church, how can we use our personal social medias as a voice to help enable and to encourage participation, keep discourse open, share gratitude and thanks for various social projects, and just sort of to kind of get us thinking about social ministry more. And I certainly think it's very cool that the history of the church has been one of many social projects. Every year in the Steeple to People, there's under mission, there's something, and even outside of mission, there's many thanks that are given to members of the church, women of the church, and men of the church, from people of the community that are very grateful and thankful. So I think it's important, especially in the 60th year, to continue the tradition and to continue to find ways in Steeple to People and outside of Steeple to People of how we can continue to have a voice in the community, continue to help others, and continue to spread our gospel in that sort of way.
James, where do you think the live streaming fits in your social ministry concept?
That's something we may have to explore more. That's like, for example, in making the PowerPoint, that was one of the things that I was like, oh, we're not doing that yet. We're not live streaming.
But we're trying.
Yeah.
That's what I thought part of your job description was.
Yeah. So certainly trying to find out ways, maybe creating online fundraising events where, it could be as simple as live streaming stuff we were already doing, but also maybe creating new ways and figuring out, and this could be beneficial for those in the church, especially who are remote or even past members of the church, even past members who are involved in social ministry projects, and figuring out ways that we can, get donations. So one cool thing about live streaming nowadays, every live streaming platform, there's a donation sort of button. So no matter what type of content you make, if you're like playing video games or you're cooking or you're, doing whatever, there's an option for people to donate. So how it relates to us as a church, we can have a live stream and say, hey, all donations for this will go to this.
Yeah, because we have a community base here with the elderly, which I didn't see any discussion of, where if we can bring the things that we do at this church into Manor Care, into Ingleside, for people who cannot come here, isn't that the greatest thing we could do with social media?
Yeah, absolutely. Reaching out to people that can't be here physically, and continuing to not only spread our message, but
with the donation button.
Yeah, they can be directly involved without having to, because of limitations they might have. They may not be able to go on mission projects, but they could be able to support.
Exactly.
I was wondering, I don't have the knowledge base to determine what is live streaming, Zooming, YouTube, but it brought to my attention that we're creating ministries throughout the world. Would it be possible to either live stream, YouTube, or sort of connect over social media with individuals who we are serving globally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is one of the goals, and creating sort of a foundation on social media where everything's connected. So, no matter what platform you're on or how or where you are in the world, you can be involved in one way or the other.
Yeah.
James, thank you for putting this together, particularly the history going back to 1963. Really quite interesting. Now, there are many churches who are struggling with this or doing this kind of business. Have you looked at other sources, but other churches? I know there's one in Atlanta, the Chhetree Methodist, is that the one? It's a huge online social media program that some of our friends listen to. And so there are other churches that are doing this. So I don't think you have to start over.
Right.
But there are sources that have put together some of these programs that could be adopted to our particular situation.
Yeah, my 100% strategy with our social media is looking at other churches and seeing what they do and what they do well and what they do not so well, and then apply to ours. So that goes from like the types of pictures I post to the graphics I post to what's even through commentary on our live streams, I'll make sure to type and say, welcome to PPC, things of that nature. So a lot of, because, when I first started working here, I did the social media just to do it. I didn't really think too deep about it. And then as I got deeper into it, I started taking inspiration from other churches, certainly figuring out ways of marketing, interactiveness, community-based things, and how we can sort of all wrap that around what our ultimate mission and goals are.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, so between making it too much of an advertisement,
right,
as some of the mega church programs are, and spreading the gospel in an appropriate way that's acceptable. There's a balance. You have to get support to do it. But if it's too commercialized, not we're going to do it. But some churches seem to really push the donations pretty hard.
Right.
Right.
How do you decide which platforms we're going to be on? I mean, it seems like it's a moving target with, Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, and I don't even know which age groups gravitate to which platforms.
So for us, we already had a pre-existing Facebook and Instagram, I think. So when I started helping out, I was like, okay, I'll just help out with those platforms. And ultimately, it's like one of the videos was saying is meet people where they are. So if our Facebook has a different demographic than our Instagram, for example, where there's more youth involvement in our Instagram, whereas the Facebook is more served for like the moms and the older people of PPC. So it's kind of meeting people where they are and figuring out, of course, what's appropriate and what is most beneficial and what people would like to see. At first, my strategy was like, all right, post pictures and things that were PPC that we're already doing and events and things of that nature. So now with those platforms growing and building, starting to think a little bit more about outreach, and like Tom was saying, it's definitely a balance between just trying to get donations versus being a balance. And really the social media is like, how I view it, is a voice for what we are. So what we already are and what we already represent, just trying to emulate that as much as possible. I think there was a question.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of a follow-on to what Karen brought up also. So one of the problems with social media in terms of going out, I agree with everything you said. I thought you did a great job in terms of framing both our history, but also how you got to meet people where they are in social media across different age groups. The problem that I see is when you look at social media, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's like, millions of things going on there, and we're trying to put a few things in place, and we'd like to get some feedback. This is where my question really ends up in terms of how we're doing. I mean, if we hold an event at the church and we open to the public, we take attendance. We say, oh, we had 200 people attend. That was a successful event. Or we had 2 people attend, didn't go too well.
Right.
Okay, I'm being a little extreme there. But my question is, when you're reaching out, are there mechanisms that you can get or use? I mean, simply saying in terms of our live streaming, I know in the worship committee, we try to look at, okay, how many people tuned in either on that Sunday or during the week, in non-real time, to view the worship service. That's one example. We like to get that feedback to see if we're really connected. And you could broaden that in terms of wherever we're engaging in social media. I mean, you mentioned Facebook and Instagram, other than our worship service streaming on YouTube. And are there mechanisms out there to figure out, are we connected? Because that could help direct, it seems to me, what works and what doesn't work, in addition to the point that was made by Tom associated with best practice, what others are doing. But getting some feedback, like, taking attendance if we have an event. Oh, that was a successful event because we had a lot of people coming, not just church members. Are there mechanisms like that? I'm not really all that familiar with it, that you can use to see how impactful you are. This is working, that's not working so much in terms of getting the broad awareness out in the community.
There's definitely insights and analytics, which is a great benefit of social media. You can directly see, like on both accounts, our Instagram and Facebook accounts, and even our YouTube accounts, you can go very deep into the analytics, which is very cool because later on, if, like, let's say the church were to spend a little bit of money on advertising for, like, let's say a particular event, or like a up and coming mission project, or we need donations for things of that nature, we can directly see that, okay, this type of content works and has worked in the future. For example, what I found works for us is sharing photos of church members in a particular event or group activity. And then also videos from both our pastors that are, when they're explaining either, hey, this is up and coming this week, or this, those are usually what the videos are about, like, hey, this is what's up and coming this week. So something, for example, that hasn't worked for us for now on our social media is I'll make graphics and stuff, and those won't get that much interaction. So sort of my past year has been thinking, since I've been here, just experimenting and seeing what works, just throwing it out there and seeing what works. And now we kind of have a little bit of an idea of what works and what doesn't work. And then we can use that and then, use it to our advantage if we need to boost something of particular importance, or if we have something important coming up. Like, for example, this past December, all the many services and many things that were going on, and having a platform that's right there saying, hey, this is going on this Sunday. This Sunday we have this for these families. We have a candlelight service, things of that nature. So to answer your question, yeah, there's many insights and analytics, and it's still kind of figuring out what works.
So this is like feedback, like how many clicks you're getting.
Yeah, it's literally how many likes, views, comments. So they call it interactions and engagement. So you base a post, how good a post is, on engagement. So that could mean, like, all right, maybe, it doesn't necessarily mean comments or likes or views, but a combination. And then there's also ways you can see, like, very specifically, hey, this post reached this many people. And oftentimes that many people is greater than the amount of followers we have. Like, for Instagram, we have maybe 70 or 80 followers. But the posts that do really well will say, hey, we've reached 300 or 400 people, meaning that we've, expanded way beyond our reach. And certainly what helps with that is involvement with our members. And one thing I should have mentioned, but how everyone can be involved and help is, give us a follow, a like, review us on Google if you haven't. Those sort of things help expand our reach beyond the community that's already following us online.
Okay, thank you.
Will you speak a little bit about how Spotify plays into our outreach?
One thing I started doing, all the sermons are now available on podcast platforms. So the Bible reading, and then immediately after the sermons, it's about 15 to 20 minutes. It's on Spotify. You just search Potomac Presbyterian, and you'll get that information there. You'll get information about what the teaching is like. So so Spotify is not a traditional social media, but again, it's another platform where, hey, you might have someone who moved from PPC and they still want to keep up with, what we're doing, or it could be a church member currently that throughout the week, you just want to re-listen to the information that was given this past week, or the Bible verses, things of that nature. So it's an ongoing continuation of just putting our voice and our name and, what we do out there.
I'd actually like to, one of the challenges of social media is an awful lot of it is wide, but not necessarily deep. And a lot of what a church is about being deep. And so there are, in the business world, all these people who are I'm the VP for, social content, social media for my company. Is oh, we have 1,400, blah, blah, blah this week. But, well, did it make you money? Did it? Well, no, it's just people are contacting. So I have actually a question. I have a question for Emily, Pastor Emily. And I'm struck that first Christmas of COVID 2020, we watched Christmas Eve service online. And I'm glad we did it, but it wasn't like meaningful. It wasn't candles and communion and everything. I mean, there's a lot of a church service is
The presence.
experiential and is feeling close to God. So the question for Emily, if you're willing, Emily, can you talk about feedback you get from people who maybe aren't here physically a lot, but who watched the church service? Do they explain that this was really meaningful to them? I'm just thinking like the brass playing the week before Christmas, like a lot of that doesn't come across very well, I don't think, on social media. So I'm just curious, if you could just talk about your perceived depth of how we hit people.
So, I have had people, especially older adults, tell me how grateful they are that we have an online presence now. And I've had people, especially since the pandemic, say they're never coming back to the church in person, either because they don't feel safe or are physically not capable of doing that. And those are the folks who sort of stand out most readily in my mind to respond to your question, who have said repeatedly how grateful they are, and that we have this online presence, that they have a way to stay connected with the congregation through worship. And our regulars on Sunday worship, usually live, but not always. Sometimes they can go back to it. And that's been a recurring theme from older adults who are able to access us online. Others would say, it's not as sort of satisfying to the online experience, and have sort of fallen off because I've heard from some, they just have gotten out of the habit of physically coming to church and don't have the desire to join us online as much. I think we have to, if we want to remain sort of relevant and active in this century, we have to do what James is saying. We have to have a presence. We have to be online. We have to engage with people through social ministry, through social media. And we're avoiding saying social media ministry, because it's really everything we do is ministry. And then I thought it was interesting the distinction James gave us of social ministry, the history of it, so sort of outreach and mission, and then now with social media, how we engage that social ministry. So that was sort of an interesting distinction, but we're not saying social media ministry necessarily, because ministry is ministry. We do it in person, we do it online. We're sort of paving the way. We're paving the way, a new way for how to engage online and be out there, have outreach. But some people have said they're making their online ministry not very engaging, because they want to push people to come to church, come back in this space, so that they're keeping their online ministry sort of lackluster. Or we're not going that route. We're trying to make our online ministry engaging so that people want to, because we know that there are those who rely on that, who have said this is the way that they stay connected with our community. So we're balancing the both ends. We're not jettisoning online now that the pandemic is waning. We're actually ramping it up, but we're also ramping up our in-person. So I don't know, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I think that we've learned a ton as we've gone through it. And I think that James did a really good job of showing us that social media ministry is ministry, and it's a new way. And so we've learned a lot. And so, for instance, I think that the more that we've been in the online space, the more we've seen how important the quality of what we're doing is. And so part of the reason why we're going to install lighting into our sanctuary very soon here is because so we're used to watching HD videos when we're watching videos at home or going to the movies. And so if we put out a quality that's not at a certain level, then people might just not tune in. And so it's really important, the quality. And so we're adding, and we've improved quite a bit with 2 cameras, and the sound James has done wonders for, to where we got many comments that the brass and the choir sounded amazing on lessons and carols. And so I think that the quality of what we do is really important. So we're thinking of setting up kind of a social media studio of sorts where we'll have lighting and scripts. And so the more we can improve, the more kind of outreach we can have, because that's kind of what people expect. So we're meeting people where they are. We have a fuzzy video where you can't hear and there's wind. That's not as beneficial as a kind of more professionally, quote unquote, done video. So that's one piece. Another piece is we've had members join the church who don't live here or are in different states, or they stay members when they move, and they're still very active and they're engaged. I think that we've also seen people don't just watch our service on Sunday. We actually get over double the views during the week after Sunday church service happens. And so the flexibility of being able to attend church on a Wednesday afternoon when you have a moment of downtime, we're seeing that happen over and over again. And even members who are very active, if they're out of town, they're still catching the services and staying in tune. So I think that all of that has been kind of a learning experience, but I think that people find the online services very meaningful. There's been some people who come to, and another very important part is the online service is really the new front door of the church. And so before most people, especially my age, come to our church or come to a church, they go online, they check out the service, they learn a bit about the pastors, and then they come in. And so we've had some people come in and feel like they've said, oh, I feel like I know you because I've seen you online a few times, or I know more about you. And so it's this interesting new dynamic. So like, for instance, my little girlfriend's boyfriend's family watches us every week, even though they don't come in person, because they go to their church at the same time and then they watch our service after. And so we're finding like these new unique ways for people to be engaged or be active in our community. We're teaching them about what it means to be Christian. They're an active part of the worship and experience, even though they're not here physically. And so it's kind of this new open way of being the church and doing the church. And I think that for us, one of the big growing things that we're trying to lean into this year is really taking that social media piece. So when we first started, we were like, okay, we're going to put out our events. And so here's a flyer. And so that worked a little bit, but then people got tired and they just moved past the flyers. And so really this year, we're trying to think, if someone only saw one video from us, how can we share the good news in that? And so one thing James and I are working on right now, or all of us as staff are working on, is really gearing up for Lent. And so lots of people out there have no idea what Lent is. And so 2 weeks before, we're going to try to put out a video of, hey, this important church season's coming up. It's Lent. Here's what it's about, prayer and fasting. So it's kind of like, if someone was only to see that one video, how can we teach them or help them learn about God, or plant seeds that then can bear fruit in the future? So it's really kind of an expanding, and we've learned a lot, and we need to take new approaches as we continue to learn and live into it. But I think that all of the trial and errors have led us to a more kind of important point where we can be more outgoing and engaging in our online ministry. So yeah.
One quick question. Part of the church service is Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing for the youth on Sunday online? Is there, you can film a Sunday school lesson. It could be taped, it could be live, because one of the reasons some people come to church is for Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
We're missing this population of young people who are not coming to Sunday school here. We need to capture them in another way.
You want to talk about youth group or
Youth in particular? Yeah. So we're trying to do more with that. And so for instance, like our youth are on Instagram, Snapchat, or kind of maybe the two big ones, TikTok. And so how do we dive into that? So James is actually working with Gabby Henderson. And so she's starting kind of an internship to help us think about what youth outreach on social media in particular looks like, as well as just general church outreach. And so I think that's one of our growing points. And so how do we show, and I think the big thing is how do we authentically show who we are and invite people into that? And so part of that is through, and part of that's like teaching and showing what we do, but also how do we really value if someone just sees that and feels engaged with our church, we can value that too, even if they never come or never donate. How do we be God's hands and feet without expecting anything in return?
The way that we've structured Sunday school a little bit for youth is now youth group in the evening. So Oh,
Little
for
ones.
children.
Children.
Children's
That's-
Sunday school.
Well, you can do that. You can give permission to.
Mhm.
Oh, you mean for children?
The children.
Oh.
I mean, that's a huge hook for many people to come to
Yeah,
church.
family,
Sunday.
good point.
Yeah,
The-
James is
the little
promoting
ones.
children's programs and
Alright.
yeah.
Because what are they doing?
Yeah.
They're, their
Yeah.
parents, I mean, it may be another factor to work on. And you can film children, it's done all the time. You get consent, you film the children, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So we have photo permission
Film-
for.
Yeah, yeah.
Film adults. I mean, I don't sign a consent to be seen or.
So children's Sunday school, we switched it to during worship. You know that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So
Sorry.
James did promote the children's class that happened. He put it out on Facebook and showed clips and things like that. So we're doing that kind of thing, but yeah, so I think it's important to.
Okay. I mistook what you said for you. I thought you meant.
I mean,
teenagers.
once in a while, I mean, I think it's a good point. Once in a while, not necessarily every Sunday, but separate from the live streaming here, one could record a lesson.
You add it on.
And then have that lesson, maybe do that, I don't know, once a month, or it doesn't have to be every Sunday, but choose a real good one. And stick it out.
I mean, for the Sunday school or the teacher and the.
Yeah,
kid,
because
whatever it is.
it's a good point.
It doesn't have to be 45 minutes. It can
No,
be
no,
10
it
minutes.
can be a sampling of a lesson or something,
Yeah.
but something that would
Uh-huh.
grab. I like the way you both, and you, Chris, also talked about, and I think you did too, James, about selecting things that we think are gonna be successful in terms of bringing folks to our community and participate in that community. And I like the way you both talked about that, as opposed to just blasting things out and hoping for the best, you know what I mean?
Right.
Making some critical decisions of, okay, this is a good idea, let's put our best forward. And then the feedback to see how we're doing. I like what you answered about that, James, in that regard as well.
We're gonna have to cut this off, but I want to thank you, James, for your excellent presentation. A lot of things for us to think about, and we're sort of forging into new areas of ministry. That's basically, this is new for us. How to make this work, how to engage this, how to be relevant online. So we're grateful for your ministry with us and for the presentation. Thank you. Next Sunday, we'll be here again. Chris is going to lead us sort of a follow-up, right? For on mission initiatives.
Mhm.
Great, thank you.
All right.